Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour, or as we like to call it here at Climb in the Pocket, Monday morning with Matt and Miles, following a Week 3 loss to the Chargers, 28-24. Man, I don't even know where to start, Miles. We just talked about it pre-show, but I wanted to record this almost last night because I was just so upset at just sort of how the end of the game went.
And that's what our post-game show's for too, right? Like Flip and Jason, those guys can kind of like get those takes off because it's that like immediate reaction.
Really.
You should have, yeah.
But instead I just cracked a beer and scrolled Twitter. It just, what frustrates me the most is not so much how people played in that game. I mean, obviously stats-wise, when you look across the board, the offense looks great, right? I mean, Justin Jefferson, 7 receptions, 149 yards. Kirk Cousins, he obviously went 32 of 50 for 367, 3 touchdowns. And the running game looked like it had a little bit of, momentum to it. Alexander Madison getting 93 yards on 20 carries. But what makes me upset is all offseason, we were told that Kirk Cousins is more comfortable in Kevin O'Connell's system and that they can really build off of everything they know from last year. In the last 45 seconds of that game was anything but that. Kirk Cousins looked confused. He looked like a rookie out there, and shame on Kevin O'Connell too. Like you practice so many scenarios for a team. They do 2-minute drills. They do it all in these practices. How can you not be prepared in that moment? Like, it's inexcusable. And here we are again.
Let's get into it because, like, we heard after the game, Kirk not blaming the fans, but essentially putting some onus on their lack of situational awareness on the fans.
Yeah,
and that in itself is a bother to me. It's not like it's not the fans' job to get you lined up, to get you a play called, like, or to be quiet after you make a big play. Like, that TJ, like, I saw some people on the timeline saying, like, fans just need to be quiet. TJ Hawkins has just made a first down I think that was on the 4th down play.
Yeah, they're going to be hyped.
Yeah, he catches a first down. It's first and goal at like the 6-yard line. Like, fans are just supposed to just like sit in their seats and be quiet. Like, yeah. I don't like putting any onus on the fans in that situation, because what bothers me is that in those situations, because you know that there's no time left in the clock, you have no timeouts, you have to score a touchdown. Those types of scenarios, what bother me the most is, and I know it's based on situation, but you should have more than one play in the playbook so that you don't have to, like, Kirk shouldn't have to need O'Connell to call the play for him in that situation if they're not going to spike it. Like, I tweeted this out yesterday. I had no issue with not spiking the ball if you had a play in the ready to go to get lined up quickly. Like, yeah, I know. So for my past, like, there's times when you're in 2-minute drill, we called it, or, a fast pace. Sometimes you'd call 2 plays in the huddle. And that first play is the first play that's being run. That second play is basically like the next play that's coming. If you get inbounds, you can't stop the clock, those types of things, because you need to hurry up and get to the line. And you don't have enough time to, like, start making checks and doing all this. You just got to get to the line and go. So sometimes our coaches would say that second play is going to be the play that happens if this happens. And that's what felt like to me should have been a scenario. Like, that second play should have been already with the players so they knew line up, get set. And if Kirk needs to check a couple things at the line, fine. But, like, everybody needs to be on the ball and ready to go and know what their responsibility is at the, like, right the second TJ Hawkinson hits the ground, catches the ball, and, like, gets up and hands the ball to the ref. Like, that needs to be if you're not spiking the ball. And so, like, what bothers me there is the second Kirk went to his headset and was, like, listening and, like, didn't know what the hell's going on, it should have just been spike it and reset. Because at that point, you need to slow everything down, get back on the same page. And I think the crowd would have calmed down. The crowd would have calmed down and quieted, like, all these things. Like, that's where I just needed, like, I'm not putting the blame on Kirk. It's more of just like, dude, you've been in this situation. Like, you have you have the ownership of the offense. Just take it. And O'Connell was not going to kill Kirk Cousins for, like, spiking the ball there. Like, right? Like, he would have understood. I feel like out of any coach we've ever seen in Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell might at least outwardly be the most like understanding coach I think I've ever heard. Like he would have been like, "Oh, I wanted him to run a play here, but the crowd noise, he couldn't hear me. Like he spiked it. I'm proud of him for that." Like that's something like O'Connell would have said in that situation. I feel like if that had happened.
You know what's interesting? I don't know. Did you watch the O'Connell presser afterwards?
A little bit. I didn't. I was probably just too upset to watch. And sorry, I don't feel the greatest. So I've made the Vikings are probably doing this to me. But I like took a quick like power nap after the game.
I don't blame you. It was interesting just kind of hearing O'Connell's presser and then Kirk. So obviously someone asked Kirk, "Do you have the authority to like just go up and spike the ball, whatever?" And he says, "Yes, I do." But he's like, "And I've done things like that before, but there's consequences." And there's that like risk averse like mentality that we just
What are the
don't need in those.
consequences, Kirk? What are you? Are you gonna? He's gonna make you run after the game? Like what?
Yeah,
What is the coach gonna do to you?
I don't know. But it was interesting to also hear Kevin O'Connell speak
Gonna
about
get
the whole
fined?
situation because I can tell he's caught like in that like weird balance of like I can't throw my quarterback under the bus, but I know damn well Kirk fucked up there.
Yep.
He should have spiked the ball. We would have had 3 plays at the end zone from the 5 and probably win that game. If you clock that ball, I trust Kevin O'Connell's play calling in the red zone enough that I'm confident that they win that game. So it's just interesting, and I knew this was going to happen at some point in Kevin O'Connell's career here when we lost a bunch of games where he was going to bring back the Rams. Well, we lost, we didn't win a game in the month of November. We went on to win the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, right now this team doesn't look like that, and.
No.
The defense, let's switch to the defense side quick. They blitzed 82% of the dropbacks yesterday. Keenan Allen looked like he was in his prime. Justin Herbert.
Keenan Allen's my guy. I can't.
I know, but 18 receptions breaks the franchise record for the Chargers, 215 yards, which is his career record. And then he threw a damn touchdown.
Yeah.
And Justin Herbert, meanwhile, only missed on 7 passes. And he was throwing 8.6 yards per attempt yesterday. It's just this defense, and Jason alluded to this on Twitter this morning. They don't have the players. And so what they're doing is they're just like they're pulling a piece of the playbook out of Remember the Titans. They're just gonna blitz all night, and they're just gonna live and die by it.
Yep.
And I thought we saw some great plays from a Caleb Evans yesterday, Ivan Pay, like they all have like these splash plays, but there's no consistency across the board. And I'm just like, when you think about the whole season coming up here, just having a hard time trying to figure out what is this team? What is this team right now?
Right.
Is it poorly coached? Is it like poorly executed? I just don't know what to think.
I mean, I think it's a combination of everything. And that's why, like, you can't just put the onus on just the defense or just the offense or just the offensive line or just Ed Ingram. Like, as you like it can't just be about like one player, one scenario. Like, it's a culmination of everything, excuse me. And let's talk about like Byron Murphy looked pretty good yesterday, but they still gave up 18 catches for 215 yards to Keenan Allen. Mike Williams had a big touch, like big play, made some big plays before he got hurt. Josh Palmer made, a couple big plays. Like Gerald Everett looked pretty solid too. Like you might have a few guys that make good plays here and there, but like as a defense as a whole, like Jason mentioned, like you mentioned, the personnel just is not there, especially up front. Like I'll continue just to say that up front, that front 4, front 5, based on this base defense, like they just don't have, like you have Danielle Hunter and then you have guys.
Yep.
It is Danielle Hunter, and then it is a bunch of replacement level type players. Like I think Harrison Phillips is a good player. I don't think Harrison Phillips is some sort of like you can't replace that guy with any like, and that's no offense to him, but like it just in general, like you don't really have the guy. That's why Brian Flores has to blitz as often as he does to create any sort of pressure. He's not getting, unless Danielle Hunter is getting one-on-one matchups or like finding ways to get to the quarterback. He's not. The defense is not creating pressure without blitzing. It's just a fact. Mike Zimmer had to deal with this in 2020 and 2021, And like Brian Flores is just because they're the same type of like coordinator, in my opinion. Like they love to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
They love to get their like, but in an ideal world, they wouldn't have to blitz as much as they do because they're down.
Yep.
They're down. Their front seven or the front four, front five would be the ones garnering that pressure. Like we saw in the heydays of the Vikings with Mike Zimmer, that front four was getting all the pressure they needed so that they could drop, the rest, 5, 6, 7 guys if they had to. And so that's the hard part is they just don't have those guys to get that pressure on the defensive side. And then you flip it to the offense. We talked about this pre-show. My issue is it's not that the offense hasn't come out and shown that they can be explosive, that they can make big plays. Like we saw Jordan Addison had a drive to himself essentially where he was getting a lot of opportunities and looked really good. Justin Jefferson did Justin Jefferson things. KJ Osborne had an impact, TJ Hawkinson. But it always feels like the offense doesn't get rolling until they have to. Yeah. They don't get into a rhythm until they're like, oh shit, we're down 2 scores or we're down 14-7, 21-10. Like any of these types of scenarios, it doesn't feel like that sense of urgency doesn't come until they're already like until it's needed. Like that type of stuff has been really bugged me this year. We saw some of it last year, but they pulled out the games last year. This year they're not pulling the games out, so the impact has a little bit more onus to it. And so that bothers me a lot. Is that like the offense to get into a rhythm, they have to like get into like their urgency 2-minute type like fast paced offense just to get things moving. And then they start to settle down. I don't like that. Like it's like get into that early. Like I know you can't always dictate everything, but I just don't like the sense of urgency doesn't come until it's needed. It's really bugged me.
And I want to ask you a question on that. So do you think that's more Kevin O'Connell and his play calling, or do you think that's really just offensive execution that's just failing to kind of get in that rhythm? Because I do feel like there were some layup plays to kind of, I mean, it's weird that we have such like all these veterans kind of on offense with Kirk Cousins, Jefferson, whatever. And it almost feels like we're spoon feeding them like we did Ponder back in the day. Like, all right, here we go. Let's try and build some momentum here on offense. And we just can't quite get it. So I don't know if it's the execution side from the players or if it's the play calling, in which if you say it's the play calling, I have a second question for you, which is should Kevin O'Connell give up play calling to Wes Phillips?
I'll answer that one quickly. I don't think Kevin O'Connell needs to give up anything in terms of play calling, but I think like in that first drive, like obviously they were rolling the TJ Hawkinson fumble. Like that's just kind of like one of those freak plays, but that number 32 for the Chargers was everywhere yesterday, by the way. Like that dude was kind of making plays. He should have had a second fumble on Madison that they didn't call, but we don't need to do that. I think we can get
sometimes you need a little luck.
Yeah, no, for real. But I think the biggest issue, it's not an issue, but like the first 2 drives tend to be scripted. You tend to script those plays because the situation, like it's your first drive, so you can kind of plan that out. As when the game gets going, you kind of have to adjust based off of how they're playing, how you're playing, all those things. So that changes how you call a game. But to start the game, and maybe that's something they need to adjust. But to start a game, you have these scripts of plays that you kind of follow to a T. And that usually makes it a little bit easier for an offense to kind of get in. You're supposed to be able to get into a rhythm from that. And I think the hard part is sometimes if the defense is trying to do the same thing though. And I think that's the part. That's why the middle of the game is so important, because how teams adjust is like the biggest aspect. But like most teams go into games, all teams go into games with a plan of like what they're going to start the game with and how they want to start the game. And so I think it's just all about how you could beat. And that, to your point, is execution. At the end of the day, usually those situations, it's executional. And if you can't just execute the play, it's probably because you messed up or did something like individually or, those things. So that would say, to answer your question, is probably more of an executional issue to start the game. But I think Kevin O'Connell does a really good job of adjusting as the game goes, because he's not afraid to like get away from the run if he has to, or to focus on the run if he has. Like he's not afraid to get into a rhythm in certain areas, but you'd like to just see some of those scripted plays. Maybe have a little bit of a sense of urgency. Get it, like just kind of get guys the blood flowing a little bit, because if you kind of get into a huddle, you're just like kind of playing a little slow. You want to pick the energy up a little bit. Like on defense, you can do that because if you make a big play on first down, your energy levels get up a little bit. You start get hyped. Those types of scenarios. On offense, unless you get a big play, you're kind of in this like do. Like you're kind of
Yeah.
just like plodding along until you get that big play or get a play that like gets the juice going.
Yeah.
Whereas defense, you kind of like can create that juice in a different way. And so I think maybe they just need to pick up that tempo a little bit to start the game, just to help get that blood flowing.
Yeah, we talked about it in our game day chat. I was just like, Kirk just needs like a big completion to kind of get that
Right.
mojo, and then sure shit, he hit that dot to KJ Osborne, who took it to
Yeah.
the house after that. But there was something else I was going to bring up here when it comes to the offense, and it's just their third down efficiency. So yesterday, as a team, 4 of 14. I feel like this team is constantly putting themselves in second and long, third and long, and it just makes it just really difficult. In fact, what I'm going to do, make myself a note here. I want to look what their average like third down was last year compared to this year, because I just feel like last year they were converting more frequently on third downs and keeping drives alive. I feel like we're just not doing that this year, and it's just really frustrating to sort of watch, because you have a 3rd and 9 play and the defense knows what's coming, and they know the weak part of the offensive line is the interior, so they just bull rush up the middle, do a stunt which we can't pick up, and Kirk can't step up in the pocket, and then it's history. So, or he's getting pressured and he's getting hit while the ball is thrown out, because there was another play in the red zone where Kirk had Madison wide open, would have been an easy walk-in touchdown, and he just doesn't have the time to throw the ball either. So it's just I'm trying to figure out how this team can compete, and I know fans want us, Dalton Reisner, get him in here. We got Cam Akers. I'm seeing Akeem Hicks steam. Oh, let's get him in here.
I don't think that's going to change anything.
When you're relying on free agents who are still unsigned, by the way, through 2 weeks of the NFL, you screwed up long before then. These players aren't going to come in at this point in the game and make that big of an impact. They might help out, sure. Reisner is probably better than Ingram at this point.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Cam Akers is better than Madison, and Ty Chandler looked good yesterday. I just think the way this roster is constructed, we're just sort of stuck with what we have, and we're going to have to figure out how to compete. I think this offense can go up against any team in the league. I just don't know if the defense can hold teams like the Chargers or the Chiefs, the 49ers.
Well, you real quick, you talk about the offense can go up against anybody. The passing offense can 100%.
Yes,
but
yes.
The passing offense in certain situations, because if you're in obvious passing situations, most defenses can pin their ears back because they can get to the quarterback because of that interior pressure. They allow that interior pressure so frequently. So like those are some of the scenarios where you hope a Dalton Reisner can help just a few plays here and there. Like those few plays can have a huge difference. But to your point, I'm in 100% agreement. Like relying on street free agents or like guys that are basically cast-offs from their team to like be the turnaround of like why you start winning football games. Like those guys should have an impact, sure, but like that impact was needed 3-4 weeks ago. Like you can't go rewind and start the season over. Like that's just not how it works. And the one thing that they're doing, they're competing in every game. So it's not like this team can play with anybody, but the issue is they don't have, and I hate repeating myself multiple times, like week over week, but like it's the margins for error. They don't have any. Like, and we know that Crazy essentially went into this offseason was like, we need to reset our books. So that means guys, some of the veterans need to go. Some of the guys aren't going to get the extensions they might want. We're not going to go give a huge like multi-year free agent like deals to guys. Like we just don't have it. Like we don't. We want to reset our books because the books were so like in such a bad place when Kwesi took over, and he didn't get a chance to do it last year. And so that means in some of those areas you're gonna have a Jonathan Bullard who's a vet minimum free agent. You're gonna have. I know Kairos Tonga didn't play.
Mark Sanchez loved Jonathan Bullard yesterday on the broadcast, by the way.
And he had some good plays, but like, right. But like, it's those things like, and I know Kairos Tonga didn't play yesterday, but like those guys going into the season, people are like, oh, these guys are going to like take that next step. It's like, to what? Like that's the hard part is like, I know as fans, it's really easy to get hyped for certain things of certain guys, but like at the end of the day, guys are what they're going to be over the long term. Like you might get some splash plays here and there, but some of these guys are just literally replacement level players. And like, they don't have the resources to replace those guys right now. They didn't. And so they said this is kind of where we are. And we hope some of the areas like coaching can help us, and like coaching can only take you so far.
Yeah.
And I think people expected Brian Flores to come literally make like magic out of nowhere. Like,
hey,
yeah, go ahead.
Unless he
I'm ranting at this point.
You're fine. We got Wednesday potentially if you're feeling good for it too. But Brian Flores at this rate will be our defensive coordinator next year. I don't think
Brandon
he's going to
Staley if he doesn't.
I don't think he's going to get poached. There's one thing I wanted to bring up here before we hop off. It's funny how last year we were like so lucky in everything. It just feels like it's not even like a regression to the average. It's somehow swung in the complete opposite direction when you think of like the bouncing off of a Caleb Evans' hands in for a touchdown. But Kevin Cole on Twitter, who used to be a data scientist for Pro Football Focus, he runs like a adjusted scores thing, and he tweeted out this morning just to put a little bit more salt in the wound. So last season the Vikings 13-4, but would have been 7-10 in like the adjusted scores. This year 0-3, but should be 2-1 in the adjusted with the adjusted scores.
Well,
it's just
and that's the swing. It's
painful.
like last year. Well, and we'll probably see later in the season the Vikings will win a couple of those games. Like that's usually how. Like last year we were expecting them to lose to some, like when like hit the halfway mark and they were winning these, and you're like, it's not sustainable, blah blah blah, and they still ended up winning them.
Mm-hmm.
But like I still would expect down like toward the end of like as the season goes for them to win a couple of those games too. Like just like you said, like they should be 2-1 in those, but they're not. They're 0-3. Like I would expect that regression to hit back to the mean, you know, and the hit the other way. So like that's the hard part is you can't. But like that's the crux of the whole issue with this team. The last handful of years is they're so reliant on they don't beat teams in the third quarter. They're basically having to try to keep pace in the fourth quarter, and then hope they have the ball last, and hope that they get to like they basically are winning the game within the last 4 minutes of the game, and like those types of things. It's not a sustainable thing to do. Like you can't always be in 1-score games and then like expect to win all of them. Like if you can't put a team away early enough, you're always going to be in these types of situations where we're talking this could have gone this way, that could have gone that way. Like no, like start playing better earlier and put yourself in a better situation so that you're not always having to play from behind or having to like the last second drives. Like it's not about Kirk being clutch. Like we've talked about this. Like it's just about needing to be better in those like the first and third quarters so that your team isn't so reliant on those fourth quarters needing to be playing from behind. And so, that type of shit just drives me nuts. And like, I don't, we're at a point where I kind of just have my hands up. Like, I don't know what else to do, but then we see guys like Justin Herbert. And like, I know going into the game, people are like, oh, Herbert hasn't done this, but blah, blah, blah. But like, did you see some of those throws that dude made? Like that he rolled to his left and came back across his body and hit Keenan Allen in the middle of the field with a linebacker literally like maybe like a few feet away from him, but he threaded the needle right to Keenan Allen. Like, and this is just
dropping him in the small zones, bro.
It's like that's the things that like that's the difference between him and a Kirk Cousins, and that's not me trying. I'm not trying to like shit on Kirk because Kirk's played really well this season. We know what Kirk is. Kirk's a good quarterback, but like it's some of these small things that like that's a god complex that Justin Herbert's doing. Like that's just like, bro, like as a defense, you're like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? Like we all played our coverage. We did what we were supposed to do, but he's throwing dots across the field when he's not supposed to. Like,
and I'll preface, those won't always work out, but I would
100%.
rather you take those plays than the alternative, which is
it's
taking
also
a sack or
having it's like you have the ability, like he has the confidence to do it because he has the ability to do it. Like Kirk knows he can't do that, and that's okay. I'm not like, oh man, if Kirk can't do that, well, like, you need a new quarterback, because that's not what it is. It's just like that sometimes separates the elite from the really good, the above average. Like you can hit. That's why people talk about Justin Herbert as like being a top 5. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback, but like yesterday he damn sure looked like one. Like, and those are the things, like that's why people talk about him like that, because that dude can just. He can do that. Yeah. And we could talk about their fourth down decision. We could talk about, I know you got to jump here, but like we could talk about we could do all those things. But like at the end of the day, like real quick, I want to talk about that real quick. That like fourth down decision by Staley.
Yeah.
It was the you're up 4, you're not up 3, you're up 4, and if you get that first down on 4th and 1, the game's over. The Vikings don't have any timeouts. They still have to score a touchdown. So if I liked that call from Staley. If Kevin O'Connell was in that same situation, I would want him to make that same call because it's like I want to close this game out. Put the game away with my offense. If we score, if we get that first down, it's over. Now the play call, that was trash. Just let 6'6", 240 Justin Herbert fall forward and get the first down. But like, they didn't. But like those types of things, like I like that gutsiness from a coach. So I'll give him props for that, even though it didn't work out. But like they ended up winning the game because we needed a touchdown and it didn't work.
Yeah. We'll probably have a lot more to still talk about on Wednesday as we
dive into it a little bit more.
Key into what is a must-win game versus the Panthers. So
been a must-win game.
It's wild.
This was a must-win. This was a must-win game.
Every game is must-win at this point. So
oh my goodness.
Oh man. Well, like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday, 7:00 live on our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I forgot to give the shout out to all the sponsors. So Lake Monster Brewing, Eastside Jiu-Jitsu, That's Badass Wood Art. Remember to use promo code CT Pocket for 20% off any one item at That's Badass Wood Art. And go give our guy Vikes Insider a follow on Instagram and Twitter as well. Pushing out great coverage. I'm sure he'll have the PFF grades here early Monday morning. So you guys can go check that out as well. So Miles, thank you again for hopping on. I'm sure we'll be texting and DMing our frustrations throughout the week here, but I hope you feel better. And until next time, Skol Vikings.